Welcome to the Workforce Connections podcast, where we discuss workforce development in Southern Nevada. Here's your host.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the WC podcast. Today, we have a very special friend and guest and colleague. I know we were just talking about, as we warmed up the cameras, that we've been working together for a long time. And Frank, we're really glad to have you here. And so welcome Frank Woodbeck, Executive Director of Grants and Special Projects of the College of Southern Nevada, and my fellow trustee at the LVGEA.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
It's good to have you here, Frank. So
I'm honored to be here.
I know there's not a lot of people in town that don't know who Frank Woodbeck is, but let's give them the benefit of the doubt for those listeners, viewers. Tell us where you were born, where you grew up, went to high school, college, and what brought you to Southern Nevada. Again, I know that story, but let's share that with the viewers.
Okay. I was born in Buffalo, New York. Went to a vocational high school there, Seneca Vocational High School. Then after high school, I went into the Air Force because I couldn't afford to go to college yet. My parents couldn't afford to send me, so I went into the Air Force and decided I would either start college while I was in the Air Force and then finish it when I came out. I started college when I was in the Air Force and then came out and I went to the University of Buffalo on the GI Bill. Mm-hmm. So that was the plan, and it worked. So got my degree in business and then went into the media business. And well, in fact, I was in the media business. I worked my way through college working at a television station, actually editing television shows for local use. Wow. Shows like Star Trek. And wow. So we would take the film and edit it down to an hour. And I did that at night while I was going to school during the day.
And then what brought you to Southern Nevada from Buffalo, New York?
There was a long, circuitous route. I started in the radio business in Buffalo, not on the air, as a salesman with a company called Capital Cities Communications. And spent a good portion of my career there, and I rose from salesman up to become president and general manager of that particular station. But Capital Cities was a nationwide company, owned a number of stations when there were limits on how many stations you could own. And eventually they merged with, or they didn't merge with, they bought ABC, including ESPN and all that. And at that time, I was still with the company, went over to the cable television division. When they bought ABC, they had to sell the cable television division. They sold it to the Washington Post Company. So I spent several years at the Washington Post Company building a division for the cable company, and then came back to ABC 8 years later. Went back to ABC, to the radio networks, and I was a vice president of affiliate relations for the radio networks. But in the meantime, I had moved, when I went to the cable division, I had moved from Buffalo to the Detroit area. I was there for 2.5 years, and then when we went to work for the Washington Post Company, we moved the entire cable division to Phoenix. Oh. So I know what heat is like. Yeah. That's where I learned what heat is like. And I was in Phoenix for about 6 years, and then when I moved back to ABC, the radio network was in Dallas. And I moved over to Dallas for 10 years. Then I was left that business and went to the internet business for a couple of years at the wrong time, quite frankly. That was just before the NASDAQ went south.
Call that the .com.
The .com bust was in 2000. Yeah. I went into the internet business in February 2000. The bust happened in March. Wow. Fortunately, my company survived for another year before it was merged into another company, and then I went back into radio, which brought me out here. And I put 2 radio stations on the air here in Las Vegas. And at that time, radio began to be less fun than it was. I always enjoyed the radio business, but they were so expensive in terms of putting radio stations on the air that most stations were deeply in debt, as these entrepreneurs were. So they ended up selling the stations 5 years later, but I ran those stations for about 5 years. And I decided to get out of the business at that time. I was tired of the radio business, and I'd been in the radio and communications business for 20 some odd years at that time.
Yeah. So that's how we met you, because that's about after that, when you change industries again, I think when we met you, but it's radio that brought you here. And it wasn't a straight shot, because you kind of slingshot, from Buffalo, you went west, but then you went back. Went a little further west, you went back again. Yeah. Phoenix, back, and then finally Vegas.
Finally Vegas. I moved here from Manhattan. I was in Manhattan for 2 years.
So Frank, along that journey again, as you mentioned, you've been in the communications marketing for many years. But then when I met you, you were in the economic development world.
Right.
And then during our friendship, you went to the workforce world. So you were in the economic, the Commission on Economic Development for our state. Then you went to head our state agency, DETR. That's where we did a lot of our work together. And then you went to higher education, NSHE, and you're still there, but at a specific institution, which is the College of Southern Nevada, one of our greatest partners here. We're doing lots of projects together. How have these multiple experiences, if you will, across a broad spectrum, helped you be successful today in your role?
Well, I'll back up for just a moment to when I went into economic development. If we look at an economy, the building of an economy is really based on a three-legged stool. You have business, you have economic development, but that also requires employees. So you have workforce, recruitment, and workforce development. And that requires education. So that was the attraction there, because that three-legged stool, now I'm on the third leg of that three-legged stool.
Yeah, you're complete.
That's the world I'm in. Now, having said that, all the time that I was in the radio business and cable television business, I was either in sales, or I was in general management, or I was running a division. I started a division. But it's a relationship. Every single piece of that, the single thread is relationships. And personal relationships, business relationships, all relationships. And that's really what I believe has been my strength in what I do now, and what I did at DETR or in economic development. And strangely enough, when I was in economic development, I was one of 6 commissioners for the state. So each month we would meet to decide which companies could get abatements based on a certain number of parameters: how many employees they have or would employ, how big they would grow, what kind of investment they would make in the state before they got any kind of tax abatements. I remember at one of my first, I think it was my second meeting, and Switch Communications came before us, because they were in their infancy, but they had to change out a certain amount of their equipment to grow. They had to always be up to date. And Rob Roy, and he ran a good company. Yep. So they came to us and they needed abatements to buy this equipment, et cetera. And so a couple of the commissioners are questioning, well, why are we giving abatements to somebody who's running a business and all they're doing is buying more equipment? So I remember piping up and saying, wait a minute, they have to do this. This has to be the cycle. And if that's the cycle for growth, that's going to be good for us as a community. So they got the money, they got the abatements, and Rob remembered that particular comment being made and felt that I understood, the business somewhat. But it was a relationship deal. I didn't know Rob before that, but the fact of the matter is that in my mind, the relationship of business and how he presented, and him developing a relationship with economic development or in our commission, was what paid off and made that palatable and made that sensible to me.
Yeah.
But as always, with yourself, we've known each other for a lot of years, and it's relationship. I remember what you were doing when we met.
Yeah.
And I remember you talking about your kids, and I've known about your kids for that long period of time, et cetera. So I've kind of seen them grow up, if you will. Yeah. But it's all, again, relationship is what you do on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, I agree with you, Frank. I think, number one, the Rob Roy story, boy, that's one of the best success stories of our region. Talk about how they started and, how they parlayed that. that fiber network into what they are today. The growth since that day has probably been, I don't know how many times, tenfold.
Much more than that.
Much more than that.
I dare say 50-fold probably.
Yeah, amazing story. I'm glad you guys did that, because we have a company like Switch here that means that we are storing data for the government and international companies and all that. Another thing, Frank, that I agree with you on this, relationship thing, because, we sometimes have to go to luncheons, business luncheons. There's 300 people, and there's people like you where I will walk over to say, "Hey, Frank, how are you?" Shake your hand, talk business, talk personal, because you enjoy those relationships, and it's cool because, again, you're getting stuff done while you're actually also having fun, enjoying it. When that's not the case, if you don't have a good relationship, then you're kind of trying to leave the room because you don't want to talk to that person,
right?
And exactly. Then you're not effective. So relationships. That's really good. Frank, your title is obviously long. Is the Executive Director of Grants and Special Projects, but tell us, simplify that for us. Tell us, share with us a couple of these projects that are really meaningful. Each one of them is. Pick a couple and tell us how they're going to be good for Southern Nevada.
Okay. In essence, what we're trying to do is, as you know, through Dr. Zaragoza, his vision is, and our vision, is to, one, be able to engage the entire community into some level of education, higher education and post-secondary education. We have a large population that do not have a secondary education diploma. However, that should not impede them from being able to progress in a career. Mm-hmm. So the goal here is to try to take the largest asset we have as a community, mm-hmm. which is our population, our people, and give them the greatest opportunity to grow in the growth sectors that are happening in Southern Nevada. Mm-hmm. And we've seen those growth sectors. We can identify those growth sectors, and we know exactly what they are. So the job of the community college really is to create opportunities for business to be able to draw on talent that we will be able to provide for them mm-hmm. as workers. So one of the projects that we have most recently is our education and training center that we're building in the historic west side of mm-hmm. Las Vegas. Yeah. There's a couple of things that's going on there. One, if you look at if community colleges across the country, they aren't building new campuses because it's really not a thing. I mean, it's very expensive, et cetera. But education or training centers, which are smaller campuses, if you will, that are very specialized, are really the goal and what we have and really the future of workforce training. Mm-hmm. So that particular center, and I'll continue to use that example, one is going into an underserved community to serve an underrepresented population, mm-hmm. taking education into an area of need, a physical area of need. And we'll specialize in skill training in advanced manufacturing, IT, healthcare, construction, HVAC, welding. Mm-hmm. All in demand. Growth sectors, all mm-hmm. in demand. Yep. So, and the center is a 15,000 square foot center that is flexible enough that as demand slows in one sector or another sector grows, such as logistics and operations, we're going to be able to adapt to that and take that on. And in fact, I forgot to mention, probably logistics and operations will be one of the sectors that we'll try to serve through that center. We're going to replicate that center. We're trying to fund it and replicate a center on the east side. Mm-hmm. We're looking at two areas, underrepresented, underserved, as far as higher education is concerned, and giving that population, probably mostly adults, quite frankly, an opportunity for a career when their previous job or career left them behind. I'll give you a graphic example of this. We lost about 26,000 hospitality jobs during the pandemic. Mm-hmm. during that same period of time, from the end of 2019 to now, we've gained 28,000 jobs in logistics. So there's a shift in need, obviously a shift in skill sets. But it's not as if someone has to go and get a 4-year degree to work within the logistics and operations industry. It's not, for the most part. Right. I mean, they could do it with a certification. There's a lot of different ways, and they can get on a career path. So what we want to do is put as many people who want to and that we can accommodate on a career path of some type that would, one, fit their skill levels and skill sets, and fit them into growth sectors.
Those are great examples, Frank, because they're also not just, as you said, strategically in underserved, communities, but they're also employer-tied or driven, because I know CSN's been working with Haas for years now.
Right.
And that's just one example of an advanced manufacturer. There's many others here: Sunshine Minting, Ocean
Spray,
yep. Levi's, and Ethel M, and on. But so it's really cool that you are focusing on a pipeline of good jobs, high-paying jobs, because a lot of people again don't realize it, that when you learn to work on programmable logic controllers, or PLCs, for an automated factory, you're in the 90 six-figure salaries, just like diesel mechanics are. And there's all these great jobs that don't require, as you said, long investments of 3-4 years of investing into your skill acquisition. But at the community college, you can get it done a lot quicker and go into really high-demand career.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. And so, Frank, and that,
grow.
Yeah, and grow. And so in that same line, one of the things I think that we did together with CSN and CCSD and UNLV and our chambers, as you know, for a decade now, because you were part of it in that other role, Nevada said, we got to diversify. We got to start to, whether it's the economic development agencies, how we do that locally, we have to bring in different kinds of employers. And we've seen that now materialize over the last decade, where we have selected, as you said, target sectors, emerging sectors. Here in South Nevada, there's 7. The LVGA puts out the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, which has those 7 sectors. But last year, we did something that was a high lift, and we formed an industry sector partnership for each one of them. We convened employers, small, medium, and large, and really heard them. And some of the stuff was very common, the needs across all of them. So again, we work with you and your team and CCSD. And now the work is to say exactly what we've been talking about, is how do we build their needs into that talent pipeline? The earlier, the better, because we don't want to wait till they're 18 to say, now what do you want to do? Let me tell you about this and that. No, we want that decision to happen a lot earlier so they can graduate equipped for multiple stages of that on-off ramping of that career path. Does it mean that they can't go back to school after? No, absolutely not. As a matter of fact, the community college says, hey, be with us your first 2 years and then transfer to a 4-year if that's what fits your needs and your wants. And so having those accomplishments, Frank, of having set up industry sector partnerships, having employers engaged. I know, again, it's something we've been trying to do for a long time. We try to launch state sector partnerships, but as a region, we finally got it done. So what are your thoughts on that as my fellow LVGA board member, that we are a region now that has finally put together some regional sector partnerships that are working?
Well, it's near and dear to my heart, because the state sector partnerships were the ones that I set up under Dieter.
Oh, yes.
And this is now taking that concept to maturity. Mm-hmm. And you've actually said you have actually taken the sectors and really super served those particular sectors, and really is, I think, an example for the nation, probably. But in getting those and sitting in on those meetings, those initial meetings, business is very interested in that. And as I told you, a few times before, your presentation of it and handling of those particular discussions is not only vital, but also very inviting in terms of the business. As LVGA tries to attract businesses into Southern Nevada judiciously in those particular sectors, they work hand in hand with you and with us at the college, et cetera, to figure out, okay, how can we serve that business in all aspects? Not just say, find a space.
Mm-hmm.
It's a matter of finding a workforce, because that's their number one question.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're taking it another step further by actually serving established businesses in those sectors, because as they grow, they need more people.
Yeah.
So it just works perfectly. It's absolutely perfect.
Well, we appreciate that you, as you say, you were there from day one with us side by side. Workforce Connections took the lead, but we couldn't have done it without having our partners there at the table, right? CSN, CCSD, UNLV, Nevada State College, the chambers, other LVGA members like Lori Perdue from University of Phoenix, Shelley from Toro. I mean, I've never seen, again.
WGU.
Yeah, WGU. I've just never seen the regional partners that willing, to put in that work. It was a lot of work. It happened over a series of months and many meetings. But again, we've laid the foundation. So that being said, Frank, what else do we need to focus on over the next months and years now to make sure that this region stays competitive and has the best chance to land those key employers we want and continue to grow?
I think one of the jobs is really ours, more than one, actually, obviously. But if I look at it from the standpoint of grants, when we're looking at a potential grant opportunity, we have to look at how it's going to fit in terms of the need and how we can actually perform with it.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say it's in fact, we just finished one, as you well know, a Pathways grant, and basically we had to figure out, okay, where is this going to fit in what sector, and at that particular point, who can be our partners in that?
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, our partnership initially, the base partners have been Workforce Connections and Regional Transportation Commission, because we're looking at the next generation of mass transit vehicles that are zero emission.
Yep.
So it's perfect.
Yep.
And that second phase of that same grant is going to be setting up logistics and operations training for that particular certification program. So we feel that we have actually demonstrated, the need, and also the reasoning in terms of the population that we can serve to DOL for that particular grant funding. Now, whether we win that grant or not, I think we made a good case. If we don't happen to win it, then
at least we have a blueprint.
We have a blueprint, and we'll go after. We will continue to go after these.
Yep.
But that's really what it is. We're not really pulling the grant out the hat and saying, okay, we'll go for it, and not having a purpose.
We're being strategic.
We are being very strategic.
Yeah. And that happens, I think, again, based to your earlier point. You can't have strategic partners if there's no trust. You can't have trust if there's no relationship. And you can't have a relationship if you don't invest the time to build one, right?
Exactly.
So you before the cameras were on, you reminded me of a trip we took to California, and boy, that seems like so long ago, Frank.
It was a long time.
So here, again, as staying competitive, and we've talked about, how at the LVGA, for the first time, and I'm excited about it, we are forming a council that's all about talent. So it will be CSN and UNLV and Nevada State College and University of Phoenix and WGU and Toro, Workforce Connections, but also, again, that that talent pipeline, the longest section, even if you go to UNLV for 7 years, 4, and then your master's and your doctorate, JARA has them for 13 years.
Right.
It's the earliest piece of the pipeline, and we're going to be hopefully working over the next foreseeable future about, again, really making sure that our K through 12 pipeline is also aligned to the needs that we are trying to help our employers with. What do you think we can be doing to make sure that's sustainable, that what we're doing, that we're putting in place in the K through 12 pipeline is actually producing results for employers 5, 10, 15 years from now?
Well, I'll give you an example. The CTE, Career and Technical Education dual enrollment programs and opportunities, need to be stabilized and grown dramatically.
Yeah.
We need to give young folks an opportunity in their as they enter their junior in high school, that they can actually pursue a career opportunity, or career development opportunity, if you will, that they might be interested in. Let's say it's HVAC. And let's say they start that in their junior year. They can graduate as a senior having a certification, not only is their diploma, but a certification in HVAC work, and walk out and be able to get a job, if they'll let them graduate before they employ them, for $60,000 a year to start. That kind of thing. There's another one with that we do with Nevada Gold Mines, in which they're looking for instrumentation technicians and diesel technicians, and then they could move into up north to one of the mining areas and start at $70,000 a year when they graduated out of high school. That does not preclude them from going back and continuing their education if they could, care to do that. But at least they're giving them a firm foundation, and we have to grow those programs as we identify workforce development opportunities in advanced manufacturing. And I'll go back to the same ones because those are the ones we're going to focus on. Cybersecurity, another one. We need to really start that education process back in K through 12 at their junior year in high school, so that they can really graduate from high school with college credits and a certification and an opportunity to go into a career if they so choose at that time, and put them on a pathway or a highway, I'll call it, because you have many off-ramps on highways, and you do an off-ramp and get some more education and come back on that highway and continue your career. It's just it's the process that's going to serve our population well. And because as we know that the hospitality industry is not going away; it's growing. It continues to grow. However, what's within that hospitality industry, as far as careers are concerned, that's morphing. Those are changing, and there are a lot of jobs within the hospitality industry that will go away.
Automation, artificial intelligence.
Artificial intelligence, all this stuff. And even though the industry itself might be 200,000 people, that underneath that 200,000 people is changing in terms of what those responsibilities are. So you have people who need to go back and figure out where else they're going to do, what else they're going to do, and where else they're going to go.
So again, you and I and our colleagues, Federico, Jesus, Lori, Shelley,
Keith and Darian and
Darian, Dr. Pollard, all of us, I think that's our work ahead of us. I'm grateful that Tina and her staff are putting together this council on talent, right? So that we can be purposeful, intentional, as you just said, over the next few months and years, as the LVGA is also becoming more purposeful and intentional about finding the right match for us, right? We have challenges here. We hear them all the time. It's not just land and water, but it's talent. And so we have to be going out and making sure we are attracting the right companies that fit us best.
Right.
So, Frank, what would you give, there's probably young people who look and say, I heard this story about this Frank Woodbeck guy, man, he did economic development for the state. He headed up a state agency and workforce with hundreds of employees. Then he went to NCHI. Now he's, at CSN. He's a respected community leader. How does what would you tell a young person, boy or girl, that wants to, have that life, have all those different facets, that experience, and that reputation that you've earned over your career? What can they do now? What should they be focusing on?
That's a tough question. I've been very fortunate and a little lucky, not a little lucky, a lot of lucky. But if focusing on their education and getting through, high school as best they can, and depending on what their thoughts are as they're going through high school, as to if they have a career goal at that point, great, pursue that. If they don't, they really need to continue on in college, for example, and be able to identify somewhere where they feel comfortable.
Find what you want to do.
Right. And where you feel comfortable. And it's not as if you have to sit down and study it for, 18 days every night or whatever it is, because it's not going to come that way. Right. It's going to come based on what you feel is your comfort level. And you follow that into whatever career that might be. And then try to do the best you can at that career and be as honest as you can and build relationships.
Yeah, relationships. I think That's what I heard you say.
Yeah, I'm not. If it wasn't for Dan Klage, I wouldn't be in higher education. I was on Governor Sandoval's cabinet with Dan when I was.
He was the chancellor.
Head of Dieter. He was chancellor.
Yeah,
and we talked a lot. We worked a lot together regarding this question: how do we, train talent for the jobs that are going to be available not only today but tomorrow and beyond. He liked what we were doing together and asked me to come over to NC to work with the community colleges. It sounded intriguing because, one, I hadn't done it, but also it should have been some fun, which it was. And that's what got me over to NC. And then I was doing some other things there in terms of even federal government relations and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Because that's how you get grants done, by the way.
Yeah.
It's a matter of getting a federal delegation involved also and having them write letters of support and those types of things.
Yeah.
So it's in putting all those pieces together, I've been very fortunate in what I've been charged with, and have had a lot of fun doing it. So, and I learned a long time ago with my first job out of college with Capital Cities Communications that the president of our broadcast division, I remember him telling me, to this day, if you're not having any fun, don't do it. Get out of it.
You have to have fun. And I think in there, I would take away that you have to be open to, new things you didn't plan for. Because back when you were doing the Air Force, and then you went to communications, you weren't thinking higher ed, but you had you allowed yourself to say, hey, that looks like fun. Why not? Let's go try it, right? So you have to be open to that as well, I think. Frank, I've gotten to ask you, all the questions we wanted. Again, I get the fortune to know you, work with you. Hopefully our listeners got to know a little bit more about your role in our community. But this is the time before we close where maybe there was something that you wanted to share with us that we didn't put down there. But this is the time for final thoughts. So I give the mic open to you.
Well, I guess my thoughts are somewhat a little bit selfish, because I want to see the relationship between our your agency and our college grow, continue to grow. It's not that they haven't gone anywhere; they've gone very far.
Yeah,
and that trust level and working together is somewhat unique and modern for Southern Nevada, quite frankly. We're not an industrial state, and so it's that type of opportunity for us to help grow that makes us stronger on an ongoing basis. So that's my only real final thought as far as that's concerned. I feel it's my job personally to try and see what I can do to strengthen those ties on an ongoing basis, not try to find weaknesses in them. If I find a weakness, let's see how we can fix it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Frank, I appreciate that, and I will express my commitment to you. I know, again, off camera, we were talking about how far we've come, because when we met, the relationship between these two organizations was almost non-existent.
Right.
But through our journeys, and now, of course, as you said, your journey has landed you now at CSN, and I'm here. It's the best it's ever been. And we were talking about how, through the departure of leaders, sometimes things revert. But I agree with you. You have my commitment and that of my team that we will do whatever it takes to not let it revert or even stay the same, but grow it. As you said, that's our commitment to you. And as long as you're there, I know that's your commitment. So that's a deal, Frank. You got a deal there.
You got it.
All right. Frank, thank you for being here today.
It's my honor.
We'll have to have you back and keep unpacking this Frank Woodbeck story.
Anytime.
Okay.
Anytime.
Thank you, Frank. Well, that's it for another episode of the WC Podcast. We hope to have you at a future one. Until then, stay safe. Okay, Frank, thank you for staying over to do our bonus segment called Against the Wall. Are you ready?
Yes, I think.
All right. The first section is called Your Favorite. So I'm going to give you categories. You're going to give me your favorite one in that category. Let's start with an easy one. What's your favorite food?
Steak.
Favorite restaurant?
Oh, boy. I like that question. Probably Weird Thai.
Okay. Favorite musical group or artist?
I'm an old school guy. My favorite musical group was The Temptations.
Nice. Favorite movie?
My favorite movie was the original Ocean's 11.
Yeah, that's a good one. Favorite book?
Oh, boy. That's the tougher one. Snowball.
All right.
It was the life story of Warren Buffett.
Okay. Favorite holiday?
Christmas.
Favorite sports team?
Buffalo Bills.
Favorite Vegas sports team?
Golden Knights.
All right. You finished the favorites segment. The next one is called Tough Choices. I'm going to give you two choices. You got to pick one. Are you ready?
Okay.
Vacation or staycation?
Vacation.
Would you rather drive there or fly there?
Fly.
Once you get there, do you stay at a hotel or Airbnb?
I'll say Airbnb.
Okay.
That's what my wife would like.
All right. So you got to
hotels very well.
Happy wife, happy life,
That's
right, Frank?
exactly right.
So I think I know the answer to this one, Frank, but watch a football game or a hockey game?
Football.
Yep. Retire on a ranch when that day comes or in the city?
The city.
Here's the hard one, Frank. Actions or words?
Actions.
Justice or grace?
Grace.
Very good. You finished Tough Choices. You're rounding to the final stretch, and it's called Finish the Sentence. I'm going to give you 95% of a sentence. You're going to finish it for me. You ready?
Okay. Yep.
If Frank could visit any place in the world, it would be...
Europe.
The best part of living in Southern Nevada is...
Quality of life, ease of life.
Yep.
The winters.
Yeah, all of that true. Frank's favorite thing about his job at CSN is?
Flexibility and, the opportunity to be creative.
Very good. If Frank could travel back in time, he would travel to?
Back in time. Okay. Probably when I was a teenager.
Is that the Motown era?
That's the Motown era, but it's also when he had a chance to change anything about yourself that you didn't
Yeah, very good.
like in retrospect.
Frank, here's another hard one. 3 words that describe Frank are, number 1.
Is that a question?
Yes.
Oh.
Give me 3 words that describe Frank.
Honest. Sensitive. Integrity.
Very good. I couldn't agree more. And Frank, doing the WC podcast here today with us was?
Great.
Awesome.